Hey everybody, it's Sam. I'm back. It's Top Line Spotlight. I'm here with Asad Zaman, and you know Top Line Spotlight. It's that short segment where we go deep with founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, operating executives on a difficult business challenge that they solved in the last 12 to 18 months. We want to get tactical and we want to figure out how they did it. I'm joined today by the co-founders of Centralize, William Wang and Rachit Kataria. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
This episode of Top Line Spotlight is brought to you by ChargeV's Believe Conference. Come learn from a lineup of impressive speakers and leaders across 2 continents. The event will be held in San Francisco on April 8th and 9th, and in London on May 8th. With the code Pavilion, you can access your ticket for a 100% discount. Yes, you heard that correctly. Your ticket is free. Use the link in the show notes to get your complimentary ticket today.
Thanks for having us.
Good for having us.
We're excited to have you. There's a lot of people out there that might not know what Centralize does. So before we dive into your challenge, we want to hear a little bit about the backstory. Where are you from? What's your respective backgrounds? Have you raised money? And what's the problem that you all are solving?
Yeah, maybe super quick on the backgrounds. I think that's the most fun part. Will and I have been friends for almost a decade. Met first week of college at USC in LA. So been thinking about these things for a long time and coming together. Engineers by trade. So really quick on my end, I was a founding engineer on Facebook Shops, which was their e-commerce push during COVID. Ton of fun. Helped ship the alpha May 2020. Stock jumped 5% that day. I did not make any money.
There you go. How much enterprise value did you create on that one day, Rachit?
At least, tens of billions, which is a cool feeling. Can't complain. My stock not correspondingly jumped in billions, but it was cool. And then we scaled from about 0 users to a 250 million monthly actives in a year. So pretty crazy, Facebook numbers and seeing that go up there. Quickly, it went over to a YC company called A2B, which was a fuel card for trucking. And it's literally like Visa cards to buy gas. And we'll kind of jump into what we both saw, Will and I, at our respective companies that inspired Centralize. But if there's only one thing I took away from A2B, I was the product tech lead going on site to truck stops and company HQs with the AEs and the CSMs, giving out the cards, figuring out what they actually needed. And anyone learning, it's that if you understand the relationships on the ground, who cares about what? The CFO, the fleet driver, the manager, things are very smooth. Life is good. When you don't, and who knew, on a surprising churn case where, actually it was the champion that left 3 weeks ago. And the story of that's in a gone call 6 months ago. And the CSM on the team is no longer part of that specific role. Things fall apart very quickly. And a lot of that inspired how we think about what we're solving for. But I'll pause there and Will, feel free to jump in.
Yeah. In a former life, I was a software engineer at Slack. So when I was at Slack, I was there from 2019 to end of 2022. Saw the shift to remote work, and then I ended up helping prototype the first version of huddles and clips and save for later, lists, like a lot of these foundational Slack features. And led engineering and product on the team that launched those features, and also started the prototyping team at Slack with the former co-founder and CTO, Cal, as well as the CPO, Noah. And so worked in a lot of Skunkworks projects. And over my time there, while we're working on huddles, one of the main challenges that I saw was, who do we actually pilot this product to? It was super new. We didn't know what we were doing. Didn't know which customers would be really great to start with. It would give us good feedback. So I ended up working a lot with the go-to-market team to figure that out. Turns out, as I was talking a lot to the sales teams, I realized that relationships really matter across across every single go-to-market domain. And I realized that we were losing deals because we weren't getting above power, weren't talking to the right people, weren't multi-threaded properly. And that kind of taught Rachit and I that deals are not won at the account level, they're won at the individual level. Like, you really have to understand what people really care about in order to really, really get the value across, especially early cycle all the way to, close won when they become customers. And so that kind of led us, like with Rachit's background combined with my background, what we've seen to come together and build Centralize.
And so what is Centralize? Tell us what you guys do.
Yeah. One of the ways we like to frame it is we're the R in your CRM if it actually worked. It's the relationship layer. As much as Salesforce is not going anywhere, it's amazing. It's actually their lead investor. So Love you guys. Thank you, Salesforce. But at the same
All
time,
thanks to our Benioff overlords.
fellow Benioff friends, also fellow Trojan, fight on Benioff if you're watching this for whatever reason. But yeah, it's a glorified database in some ways, which a very critical one. Like you need to have your ops and contacts and accounts, but where do you wake up as a revenue team and think, who have I actually talked to so far in any op? From every word they've ever spoken, what matters to each individual, to Sam, to Will, to Assad, to Rachit? Who's missing? Where's the white space? Are we multi-threaded? Are we above the power line? Are we in the right functions we need to be? And then how do we fill in those gaps? By leveraging our extended networks of execs, advisors, investor relationships to actually bridge that in. And so at Centralize, it's effectively a deal collaboration platform that gives you that story and helps you operationalize multi-threading across your revenue team.
Does it sit on its own, or does it and pull data from a bunch of different sources and basically give you a view that is different than if you were in each of those sources themselves? So you're taking the information from everywhere and then packaging it into insights for people?
Yeah, so imagine, as the name suggests, right? Centralize all that context.
Yeah.
If you had to almost visualize this in the simplest form, imagine you could take every single contact that was in your CRM, clean it. Who are the people that are no longer there? You know, the job changes, they're irrelevant from 3 quarters ago. But then let's say your CRM was empty, terrible hygiene. Like everyone forgot to put anything in there. We'll find everyone that's on the receiving end of that Gong call, that email, that calendar event, that Slack shared channel, and automatically map it into, are we at the VP of sales? Are we at the director of marketing? Are we at the IC and engineering? And you start zooming out and actually seeing the visual layer that creates itself, self-healing, because we know the story is already being created across those touch points of actually, are we multi-threaded? Have we gotten to the power line? Have we not? So that number that you're trying to forecast in Clary or Gong at the end of the quarter, this is where you're living every day to make sure that that number is within 1%. Because
that's
you know
really
exactly
interesting. So how do you guys think about defendability in the post-AI world? Because your investor talks about similar things as well, right? Like with the power of AI, a lot of this can happen within Salesforce. And obviously, the game is always, can the startup find the distribution before the large company can figure out how to innovate? And is that the game here? Or how do you think about them now trying to solve a very similar problem by integrating generative AI into their platform and pulling from all these other places, but making Salesforce the place where all this happens?
Yeah, I have a couple things that I can start off with, and Rachit, feel free to jump in. There's 2 things. One is, now that the world is more focused on AI, just general human relationships start becoming like way, way more important in order to stand out as a business. And so we're seeing that folks who really focus on those relationships and really hammer home sort of that human-to-human connection, especially during like a longer sales cycle, which is where Centralize fits really well, start winning a lot more now and start standing out. And so a lot of folks are coming to Centralize to maintain and build those relationships way better and stand out from their competitors. And so that's like one thing. Second thing is, in the world of AI, I mean, like a lot of companies are putting AI into their platforms. For us, a really big thesis is combining the most critical workflows around relationships together into a single platform. So you don't actually have to go to a bunch of different point solutions to do all of these different workflows to like manage relationships. Like maybe it's like job changes, maybe it's like account mapping, like all these different things are in different tools. And Centralize is super sticky because like, especially with all the AI tools out there, because people just come to Centralize, reps on Centralize will just have a tab open and do everything they need to do just from there, without actually having to move away. And so we like crack the code of like what that workflow actually is.
What is that? When you say, I'm just curious on digging deeper on that. So when you say they'll do everything from there, does that mean that, you know, we had this wave of companies a couple of years ago. Dooley was one of them. Scratchpad was another that sort of promised to like take the rep to the place where they work and create a Scratchpad where that would automatically update the CRM. Are you replacing those solutions, or is it a different kind of solution? Are you talking about like communication workflows? Because I think reps basically do 2 things. They update stuff, they do some research, and they're on like social media, and then they're communicating, they're sending emails, they're making phone calls. Is it all of those things? So you are trying to be more than a point solution. You're trying to be a platform that sits next to the CRM, but is where the rep is actually doing work?
Yeah, that's a good way of framing it. The scratch pad and dual example is a good one, and it's interesting. We've actually found some customers moving away from those in favor of Centralize, and the reason is because, to your point, like the rep cannot fully move away from Salesforce. Those things are still going to have you update Salesforce, but in a nicer UX or a way to make sense of it, which is actually why our entire app dual read writes to CRM. So everything is bidirectional, meaning you come into Centralize, you update your op, your account, your contacts. All of that's actually writing back to CRM. And the way we think about it, going back to Salesforce as a database, well, you should have a really good system of action on top of your system of records. Salesforce will always be that database for you. It should stay there. But how do you marry that database with what information's in Gong, in your emails, in your LinkedIn relationships, in your Slacks, in a way that Salesforce will not enable those workflows? Like you don't wake up in Salesforce and say, oh yeah, like I can open my eyes and see where I'm not multi-threaded, which people have changed jobs in the last 2 months, where do I have warm intros across my LinkedIn network to break in, the account research I need to do to make sure I'm speaking strategically. Things that
can I do the action on Centralize as well? Like, because we had David O'Brien from SalesLoft on, and we've spoken to a lot of the sales engagement platforms, and they talk about a system of record and a system of engagement, and they want to be the system of engagement. System of engagement sounds a lot like what you guys are saying, which is the action side of it, right? And so can a rep do something through SalesLoft or outreach through your platform? And so they get the insight, but they can then action that insight right from there. Or will they have to then, or will outreach and SalesLoft, et cetera, say, we don't want to let you guys do that because that's what we're trying to do, and then kind of block it. So you still have to leave your platform to go somewhere else.
We do have integrations with both SalesLoft and outreach. And so we can tap into the things where, hey, we know actually that because we have every single interaction point that this account is stale. We also have the entire customer data lake of specifically what Assad has said over the last 6 Gong calls, 10 emails, and 12 Slacks. We know what you should say to him based on all that context. We can trigger off either one click sent to Gmail, sent to Outreach, sent to SalesLoft, and enable that workflow as well. But I would actually say we fit very squarely in the almost the deal execution, stage 1 to closed 1. Like, where do you wake up as a team and think strategy? Like me, frontline manager, CRO, AE, SDR, marketing, where's that single shared view of exactly what's happening in the account, who matters, who's missing, that you would actually come to every day for a one-on-one, for a deal review, to make sure that you're actually on track for that forecast.
So not number. The top of the funnel, but kind of like the mid to end of the funnel is where you like to play.
Yeah, I'll double down on the point that Rachit said. Yeah, right in the middle after the first call, all the way to deal close, because especially for, larger, more complex deals, you cannot afford to drop that deal. Like when you start that deal, you need to close it, and you need to close it fast, like as quickly as possible. And there are obviously many different factors at play there, but the big thing is how do you manage your relationships in order to get to the right people, get to the right value, so that they know, what you're providing, so you can close the deal faster. And so, for us, like we sort of help every team manage that core piece of the funnel.
Yeah, fascinating what you guys are doing. So let's dive into you're solving this really interesting challenge, a challenge that, if solved, can make go-to-market professionals really well. But along the way, you guys are going to have to solve many problems within your business to get to the point where you can impact the ecosystem at scale. So what's an interesting problem, a challenge that you guys have had to wrestle with in the last year or so that you'd like to tell our audience about?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we mentioned a little bit earlier that Centralize brings together so many different point solutions, different workflows on relationships, and becomes super sticky, super valuable when you can kind of manage all of that from a single platform, right? The challenge that comes from that, though, is getting users to see value ASAP. Because there's so many different workflows and so many different things that you can do in Centralize, it's been difficult for us to really get to the meat of what users you could want to use the platform for. And we've got to kind of apply different techniques around that, especially during our onboarding and enablement sessions, to get to that for every single user. Because usually, we have a ton of reps come on at the same time. Maybe it's like all of your enterprise reps, all the mid-market reps, even sometimes some of the SMB reps as well. And each one of those folks, just kind of meta, like what we say in Centralize, they all care about different things, right? Like their workflows are very different. And so that's something that we've just constantly been struggling with, definitely getting better, and
It's a
I think we
similar
cracked that. But
challenge to what UiPath had and other robotics process automation companies had initially, which is like we can do anything, but then to gain your first couple of million in revenue is really hard when you can say we can do anything for anyone, essentially, right? And you have a more narrow version of that in your business where at least functionally you're defined, but then within that function, what you can do is quite broad. So where did this hurt you more? Like top of the funnel, mid funnel, later in the funnel, post onboarding, so usage and retention and all of that? Where was this showing up as a pain point?
I would say parts of this problem have shown up at all of those different top parts of the funnel. But I think like the biggest time that this shows up is after we close a deal. So it'll be almost from sales to customer success kind of handoff, and then we have to understand or like kind of seamlessly share that context across Rachit as co-founders as well as the team in order to really make sure that when users get into the product, they know what to do and then they keep coming back for those workflows.
Does this mean that you guys have to essentially now understand the variety of problems that you could solve for this customer? So you have to understand go-to-market really well, then you have to understand this customer and their issues, and then you kind of have to pick what's the most high leverage one to focus in on initially and then build out from there. Because if you establish the wrong workflow initially, your usage will be crap because people don't get value from it. So you have to identify the right thing to do. Is that the core thing? Like you have to develop this depth of understanding to be able to pick the right thing to build these initial workflows around so that people are actually leaning in and getting value?
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing is always driving to the aha moment, right? Like on the demo, but not just at the demo, but after the demo. What is that feeling on the first onboarding call where it's like, wow, if I did not have Centralize, this was not even possible before. And one of those core workflows is when y'all were operators or in the past, or even when you're at companies that had operators. I'll give a shout out, like Chris from Sendoso. You're amazing, Chris, if you're watching. Hello. Chris is a great example of this, where he's built an amazing network over the years, right? This like entire base of investors, advisors, and all on Team Sendoso. If I'm Chris's AE, I am not connected on those people on LinkedIn. Meaning, you're paying for Team Link, you're paying for Sales Nav. You don't even know that there's 8 or 9 figures of pipeline sitting there that you could potentially tap into to either nudge or support as you kind of think about who and where to get into prospect accounts. And with Centralize, we actually pull all of those investor advisor connections in. So now as a rep, at my fingertips, I know who might be 1 degree away from that champion. Instead of spending a quarter to get wiggling my way to power, oh, wait a second, like maybe someone's on the shared board and they might be able to at least, put in a little bit of a reference or a note there.
So this is a modification. This is effectively like, what's the onboarding workflow that we need and what's the use case that we need to drive visualization and sort of confirmation of value. Is that right?
Yeah. And that's one of the first ahas. Like, I didn't even know that name existed and had that relationship. That actually happened on the onboarding call. And then the reps are like, wow, okay, this is starting to make a lot more sense now. And that's actually one of our most widely used features. So Asad and Sam, to your points on like where we need to find the realized value, it's Will and I with shared Slack channels, one-on-ones with the reps every single week, talking to the team like Tanner and folks to make sure we know exactly where the highest ROI is in the suite of tools that they know they're eventually going to get to, but where do we start? And then make sure that we can help them throughout the way with enablement materials.
Did the solution, so as you guys wrestled with this problem, because this is a problem that so many companies are going to have, especially in an AI world where we can do so much, what do we focus on, right? Yeah. And so was the answer not that I have to develop an intimate understanding of each customer, but more so I need to pick out of all the things we can do. These are the 2. If we start here, our chance of getting to these aha moments and getting people to really see the value and then lean into using the platform is at its highest. So instead of being broad, it was actually picking 1 or 2 things. Was that the core solution?
Yeah, I think, 2 things I can say here. One is, yes, where this starts is during the sales cycle too, right? When you're doing discovery, when you're talking to your ICP, don't move forward unless you know every nook and cranny of why they're going to come to you to use the product. So then you can take that and then literally translate that context over. If you lose that, then you're going to be in a very tough position once they're actually starting to use the product, because you don't You don't know why they're there, right? Like you don't know why they're clicking on certain things. And so all the way up when you're doing discovery, make sure to kind of work that into the process. And then to Assad's point, the kind of going narrow is we realize that, we all love our features. Our features are awesome. We built so much stuff, but users don't care, right? They only care about the things that solve their problem. And so don't feature dump. You really only focus on the features or workflows that are actually relevant to them. And that is a compounding kind of answer based on starting in the sales cycle, talking to them every day, and then kind of works into what you were saying, Assad. It was just like, really only start narrow and then go broad once you realize all the other use cases.
I love that. Guys, this is a short show. We'll have you back on the main show. But if folks want to reach out to you, because we're at time, unfortunately, if folks want to try Centralize, because I think what you're saying about sort of visualizing the data is really compelling. What's the best way to get in touch? I know it's a small team, but you guys are signing big logos. How should we demo Centralize? How should we use Centralize? And how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah. And the website is usecentralize.com, which is the end goal of all of this. I think every B2B company that does upmarket sales should use Centralize. Otherwise, pretty responsive on LinkedIn. Happy to chat anytime, whether it's curious about the product, curious about our learnings. We've talked to hundreds of VPs of sales and CROs over the year. So I'm sure hopefully any insights that might be useful to y'all, happy to share. And otherwise, we'll be around. We are pretty active on LinkedIn too. So you might have some fun content to keep you all amused throughout the work week.
We look forward to
Shoot us an email. Yeah, shoot us an email, will@usecentralize.com and Rachit@usecentralize.com as well.
Yep. We will. We look forward to using Centralize. Great URL. Thanks for joining us on Top Line Spotlight, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Catch you soon.
Bye.
All right.